Well, we're fishing today on the Grand Union Canal at Hatton, which is near to Warwick. As you can see, the weather's not exactly great. I've started catching some fantastic bream and hybrids between sort of 2 and 3 pounds. I'll just try and get this one in the net. It's playing up a bit. Nice bream. It's got to be about 3 pound, that one. Well, I was brought up fishing the canals, and even though I don't fish the canals so much nowadays, I still like to come out and have a go. And I think that the fact that canals are somewhat neglected nowadays means that there's some absolutely fantastic sport to be had. Another thing to notice is I have got some cover on the far bank, and even though the canal's heavily coloured, we're actually fishing in the middle of summer and the boat traffic can be very high this time of year. I still think it's important to have a feature or two within your peg. So this is the lighter rig I've used today. Although I'm fishing a similar depth, I've found that this lighter rig has worked much better. I've got a 4x12 wire stem pole float that's slimmer and more sensitive than the heavier float. I think the wire stem also helps to keep some stability when you get a bit of a nasty skim on the water and when the canal starts towing. It's still got quite a nice substantial cane tip. My main line on this rig is 010 Mac XT, and I'm actually fishing a hook length, but actually with 010 as well. So my hook length's around about 8 inches long. I've not got any shot on that at all, and again, using a hook length enables me to vary the diameter. So I might go fine, I might go down to 08 or 06, or I might go straight through to 010. Just gives great versatility. And again, couldn't really be a simpler rig. I've just got 4 number 11 shot there and 1 dropper. Hook bait on this has been on a size 20 or 18 B560 and either double red maggot or red maggot and a fluoro pinky. So that's a double red maggot on the size 18. So I suppose this rig's a bit of a compromise really. It's not a heavy rig, but it's one that will enable me to certainly get more bites, but also enable me to land the fish with balanced tackle. As I say, it's certainly proved to be the better rig today. And I've matched that up with a softer 6 elastic, which is solid and just through the top 2 section. So my approach today has been to focus on the far bank predominantly. In the past, you know, you'd have probably had 2 or 3 lines closer in, a line down the boat channel and a line over. But because I'm just solely targeting big fish today, I've actually selected 2 different spots in the swim. So I've got a spot to my left in front of that bush. And basically what we've got here is we've got a very shallow far bank that's shelving down into the boat channel. There's no real defined ledge as such, but the key feature on that line is obviously that tree. So I'm fishing quite close to the bush and it's giving me some nice cover where I've got depth of around about 3 foot, which I think's a perfect depth for catching these bream. I've also fed another line to my right on the same distance out and the same depth. And my thinking there is I want to establish an area of feed where I can perhaps catch initially and then as the day progresses I think the fish will probably back off over to those brambles. At the moment I have had 2 skimmers from that line, and I'm just now starting to introduce some feed past it because my original line's gone dead. Obviously plumbing up's really important, and in my mind I want to know that I'm fishing on the bottom, maybe up to over about 6 inches over depth. So with one rig I can still utilise 2 or 3 spots up the ledge, and so far today I've done best by just fishing about 2 inches over depth. The canal's not flowing at all at the moment, which is allowing me to hold the float in position and not have to fish too much over depth. When the canal starts towing, when we start getting some boat traffic, I might have to deepen off and fish more over depth. There we go, that's another fish, and again on my lighter rig. You'll notice that I'm just taking my time and I'm letting the elastic do the work. I've got a 6 elastic which balances perfectly with the 010 hook length and the 20 hook. Pace is to keep your pole low and play the fish gently back. But one thing to mention about canals is you've got to be aware of... Oh, you I was going to say, you've got to be aware of people walking along the bank and bites. Never mind, we'll go in and try and get another one. Okay, well I started off the session by feeding 3 balls, probably about the size of an orange, on both lines. And those balls consisted of about 50% ground bait, 50% micro pellets. And I laced it quite heavily with some casters. And what I'm doing is, if I'm catching a fish like that one I unfortunately lost, I'm topping up again with a small ball of ground bait, resting it for a few minutes while I try the other line. So I'm just going to pop another ball in over on that line by the bush. The ground bait, it's not a heavy ground bait, and I'm not squeezing it too hard. So I want it to break up quite quickly and just settle on that slope. If I put a hard ball of ground bait in, I fear it might roll down the slope and move away from the catching zone. Right, let's try my other line to the right. Certainly at the start of the session, if I do catch a fish, I like to rest that line and try the other swim, because the fish on canals, even though it is prolific fishing, can be quite wary. I don't want to plunder one line too much. I think it's fair to say that on most stretches of canals, the most prolific area is towards the far bank. It's probably due to just the simple fact that the tow path is busier with people moving around, and when the boats do start moving, obviously that will also push the fish away from the middle of the canal up to the far bank. And I think that's important to consider, because you notice a lot of maybe occasional anglers or novice anglers that are fishing the canal often are just fishing down the middle, which probably isn't the most effective area to fish, particularly in the summer. In the winter you can catch in the deeper water, but that's the great advantage of being able to pole fish like this and fish with accuracy and precision over towards the far bank. Let's take a look at the heavier rig. I'm utilising a rig here with about 3.5 foot of line. It means that I can start fishing deeper down the bottom of the shelf like we discussed, and then move up towards the far bank by shallowing up. Obviously if I did start to fish a lot shallower, I'd probably cut some of this line back and probably consider fishing a slightly lighter float. This float's actually 0.3 of a gram, and balances perfectly with the main line that I'm using, which is 014 Mac XT, breaks around about 4 pounds. And I've got a hook length of 012 Mac XT, that's around about 10 inches long. So it just gives me the versatility to change to different diameter hook lengths and different size hooks, and obviously allow that section of line to break if I was to snag up on the far bank or lose a big fish. The shotting pattern itself is really simple. I've just got about 6 number 10 shot. I've formed a small bulk here with 5 shot, and I've got 2 droppers. So that's a very versatile rig. I can spread those shot out if I want to present the bait on a slower fall, or I can bolt them together like I am, so I can really get the bait down and hold it in position with 2 nice dropper shots, so I can really read the bites. That's an important thing to mention. I like using the thicker tip on this pole float because it allows me to read the bites. Sometimes when you're catching bigger bream like this, you need to let the bites develop, and you need to try and distinguish the difference between a line bite and an actual bite. So that tip really helps me to do that. The elastic I'm using on this rig is white hydro through top, my top 2, so a little bit like what you'd use on the commercial. Find it soft enough to not bump the fish, but certainly powerful enough to get the fish away from the shoal and play them effectively. So the hooks I've selected today on the heavier rig are the Kamasan B560s in size 14 and 16. And actually I haven't caught on a 14 today, I've tried it. I've caught on a size 16, and I found the best bait to be 2 red maggots or the tail of a dendrobina worm tipped off with a caster. A good advantage of having 2 or maybe more swims is you can also try different types of feeding just to find out what's best on the day. And on this right hand swim I'm loose feeding casters as well. We all know how effective casters are at attracting and holding fish, particularly when you're trying to catch a decent net of bream like we are today. And I think by loose feeding it achieves a couple of advantages over just cupping into a tight area. So loose feeding helps to maybe spread the bait out a bit, so I'm not trying to feed and keep the fish in one exact spot. It means I can move and try different positions around that area. And also maybe the noise and the fall of the casters through the water can help attract fish. So at the moment I'm only loose feeding on this line, and the line to the left I'm just cupping in ground bait, maybe cupping in a ball, a small ball, after I've caught a fish, and then I'll just leave it alone. Apart from feeding, I think it's also important to think about presentation, utilising different rigs, and also how you actually work those rigs. Sometimes it just pays to sit and wait, maybe 2 or 3 minutes without moving the float. On other occasions you find that by constantly lifting and moving the bait you can actually encourage a bite. So where I'm loose feeding the casters on this line, I'm actually moving the bait, readjusting the bait, pulling it in, taking it out again to try and help maybe mimic the casters and bait that I'm loose feeding. With heavier baits, such as worms and corn, and when you are sitting predominantly for a bonus fish, then I think you can leave the bait longer in position. But even in those situations, twitching the bait can work as well. So maybe just that movement attracts the fish, or maybe the fish has already got the bait in its mouth and you actually move the float and register the bite. Anyway, it's always good to experiment and try different types of presentation. I've just had another fish on my left-hand swim. It's gone a bit harder, so I've just cut back on the feed, and again on my light rig, just fishing with a single red maggot and a fluoro pinky. So when I'm fishing relatively fine, you've obviously got to take your time and play the fish very carefully. The first few fish I caught on my heavier rig, which has got a hook length of 0.12, and I'm fishing a 16 hook, so it's much easier to bully the fish. When you're fishing with a smaller size 20 like this, you just got to take your time. But these fish here, for some reason, fight like absolutely mad. Hey, come on. There we go. Got him. Absolutely beautiful bream. Well, it's still hammering it down and I'm getting a bit wet, but I'm absolutely loving hammering these beautiful bream. Typical British weather. It rained throughout the session. Now we've packed up, it's cleared up into what looks like a nice day. Anyway, that short session has proved how prolific these canals can be. I've got 10 bream and 2 hybrids for what must be over 30 pounds in weight. It just shows what these neglected canals can achieve. Maybe it's inspired you to go and give it a go. Thanks for watching. Let's get them back.